Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Andrew Seaman, LinkedIn's managing editor for jobs and career development. I'm so happy that you're all here. And as always, I'm going to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from, a little bit about your job search or what you're hoping to do in your career, and then connect with each other. Maybe you see someone who's in your area. I'm in New York City, actually coming to you live from the Empire State Building. Maybe you see someone who works in the industry that you work in, or maybe they work in the field that you want to transfer into. And build connections, reach out to them, explain a little bit about yourself, and say, hey, wouldn't it be great for us to have a conversation about how to get to the next step in our job search or career? And, some of the best conversations that I hear happen after the show. And a lot of it is from people who end up forming lasting bonds from people they meet in the comment section. So, like I said, make sure you're introducing yourself and then building those connections. And we have such great guests today who's going to be talking about how to reach those goals. So, it's always helpful to have a buddy and a support system. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. I do want to say hi to a few of the people who have already jumped into the comments. We have Anne from Florida. We have Nicole from New Jersey, right across the river. We have Steve from Miami, Casey from Virginia, Cecile from Seattle, Lewis from California, and Andrea from Canada. So welcome to all of you. And like I said, keep building those connections, keep introducing yourselves, because today we have such a great guest. And if you're just joining us and you're new to Get Hired, I have a weekly podcast called Get Hired with Andrew Seaman, where you can find on Apple Podcast or wherever you like to listen. And we have conversations about job searching, about career advancement. And then what we do is we bring that same person back onto the show the following week so that way you can ask them questions. So for the full in-depth conversation, you can go to listen to the latest episode of my podcast. But we have the same person here with us today. And really, it's such an honor and pleasure to have him with us, Michael Bungay Stanier, who is a really prolific author in the coaching community and beyond. If you are ever looking to be a manager, if you are ever looking to help people through their careers, just through life's problems, he's the author of The Coaching Habit, The Advice Trap, and also How to Begin, which is kind of the topic of that we're going to be talking about today. He's also a founder. He runs countless management training sessions, coaching sessions. So it's great to have him here today. Welcome, Michael.
Andrew, what a nice introduction. Thanks for having me. Loving to see all the comments coming through, people from all over the world. But hi to all the people in Canada in particular. I'm Australian, but I'm based in Toronto, Canada. So I'm seeing people from across this great country as well. So hi, especially to all the Canadians here.
All across the Commonwealth. Well, yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, we had great conversation on the podcast all about setting and achieving goals. And for me, it's actually my favorite topic to talk about because I think it's really it gives you such a great destination to work toward. So it sort of informs everything that you do along the way. And you wrote a book, How to Begin. And, in it, you talk about worthy goals. And can you tell us just a little bit about what a worthy goal is? Because a lot of times I think people, they pick a goal, but, they don't put a lot of thought into it. They just see a destination. They say, that's where I want to go.
Yeah. I love how you set this up, Andrew. It's perfect because you're right. Goals can give us a real sense of direction and purpose in what we're doing. Our lives are so busy that we can spend our whole lives just kind of on the hamster wheel churning away. And if we don't have a direction, if we don't have an ambition, if we don't have goals, we can just be busy without actually making much progress. So goals can be really powerful. But I realize that the models that we often use for goals, and SMART goals is the one most of us have heard of, that's pretty good for getting some stuff done, but it's not necessarily the best way to tap into ambition. And I'm a big believer that you want to be ambitious for yourself and for the world. So hence this idea of a worthy goal. Worthy doesn't mean kind of, morally superior. It means worthy of your life, of your time, of your focus, of your resource, of your effort. So for me, a worthy goal has three key elements. It needs to be thrilling, it needs to be important, and it needs to be daunting. So I'll give you a quick definition of those three things. Thrilling means it lights you up, it gets you excited, it matters to you, it makes you rub your hands and go, oh, man, I would love to be doing this. And that's important because so often we inherit goals that actually aren't that thrilling. We're like, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, I feel like I have to do that. But I'm like, no, start with the thing that's going to be your internal motivator, your internal engine. But you also want it to be important. And important means how does it give more to the world than it takes in the broader sense? But in your career sense, it means how is this a goal that is important to your team or your division or your organization? How do you make sure that you're serving the bigger game that your organization is playing? So when you get into the elevator, it's pretending that you're still going to work, and the CEO comes next to you and she looks at you and she says, "Hey, what are you working on?" You can say, "This is the big thing that I'm working on," and she will go, "I get exactly how that's helping my organization's ambitions and goals and strategy." And then the third element is it daunting? Does it stretch you? Does it grow you? Does it expand your capacity and your competence and your confidence and your sense of autonomy? Because at the heart of this book, How to Begin, is a belief that we unlock our greatness by working on the hard things. And I want you to be working on goals that make a difference, but I really want you to be unlocking the best version of who you are, and taking on the right goal can absolutely achieve that.
I think those are really great characteristics of a worthy goal. And I just want to give another quick shout out to some of the people in the comments. We have, I want to start with Melvin from Canada. And then we have Sarah
Melvin,
from,
woo!
yeah, and we have Sarah from Georgia, Beth from Massachusetts, Laura from Philadelphia, Susanna from Los Angeles, Cassandra from Chicago, Alonzo from Florida, and Stacy from Texas. And then we have Andrea who says, I really like this approach to goal setting. So you're getting fans in the comments already.
Perfect.
And just a quick note to everyone watching, please get your questions in, because even though I'm asking Michael questions now, you'll have a chance in just a little bit.
I have some amazing answers, so I'm really looking for some good questions so I can give you my amazing answers. So bring on the questions, please. Andrew is a brilliant interviewer. This gets so much better when you're sharing the questions you want us to answer. So please, in the comments.
Especially because you could give examples of the goals you're working toward, and Michael can give you more specific answers instead of just me giving sort of the general ones. And speaking of general questions, I have one for you. So when you do set those worthy goals and you sort of are figuring out, okay, how do I get there? Where do how do you begin to actually figure out, okay, what is a logical step toward that goal?
Yeah, when you're taking on a worthy goal, something that is thrilling and important and daunting, and it takes a little bit of figuring out to really articulate that in the most powerful way. It's not then a straight, easy journey to get to the finish line because it's daunting. You've never really done this before. So there's a sense of excitement and slightly sweaty palms as you think about actually taking this on. So I've got 3 key rules about how you start to travel once you cross the threshold and you begin your worthy goal. The first is this: don't travel alone. You want to figure out who the right people are around you, people who can expand your heart and give you courage, expand your head and give you knowledge, expand your eyesight to give you ambition so you keep your eye on the horizon, expand your courage so you can be brave during the difficult times. So don't travel alone. But then really practically, it's like travel in small steps. You want to be taking lots of small steps regularly, because unfortunately, this isn't like just pulling out your phone, pulling out Google Maps and typing in a destination. It's like take a left, take a right, take a left. You're not totally sure how to get to the end point. So what you want to do is you want to set the next nearest goal and say, how do I get to this next thing? You take your best guess and then you go for it. And then you stop and you pause and then you go, now what do I do? Andrew, I find what I do is I try and work in 6-week blocks. I say, look, I'm going to set an ambition, a minor goal for what I can achieve in 6 weeks. And what I like about 6 weeks is that's enough time for me to make real progress on something that matters. But if I get it wrong or if it doesn't work, it's only 6 weeks. I haven't wasted years. I haven't wasted months. I've just taken 6 weeks. So it feels like the right balance between a commitment to make real progress on something. But if it all goes south, then it's only 6 weeks and you can reset and restart again.
Yeah, and I like the 6 week because it's not too far out. You know that it's looming.
Yeah.
And as someone who, came up through the traditional journalism industry, when you have a deadline, especially one that's like 3 months out, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I have 3 months. I'll,
Yeah.
I'll, I'll do that a week later. Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
so the 6 weeks is really brilliant, and I want to go back to something that you touched on, which is building a community around you.
Right.
And I know that you are very specific about who you should have around you to sort of encourage you, give you feedback. Can you give us an example of that team?
Yeah, sure. So often when you're asked about the people you have around you, people go to their subject matter expertise. But and that can be helpful for sure. You could go, look, this is the stuff I don't know. So how do I find people who do know about that and who can teach me or who can provide that expertise? But I think primarily, Andrew, it's about the energy I need to get through this. Because don't forget, this is thrilling and important and daunting. This is not a small thing. This is actually a significant commitment. So I'm after four main energies. One is I want fierceness, I want courage, because there are sometimes I wimp out. There's sometimes I collude with myself to opt out, to back away. And sometimes you need somebody at your back giving you a push forward, going, now be brave, step up, hold the line, push back. Sometimes, though, you also need a place to feel safe. This is kind of like a healing or a loving energy, really. Someone who is a cheerleader, someone who will support you, someone who will encourage you, someone who will say, it's okay, don't worry, keep going. That can be really important. I think there's a real energy around knowledge. So sometimes you're like, who are my teachers for this? Where do I find this knowledge? There are so many ways of accessing knowledge. This interview being just one type of format, one type of example. And then the fourth energy is out of ambition. How do you keep your eye on the horizon? How do you be bold about what you're going for? You have all of those energies within you. Warrior energy, lover energy, teacher energy, magician or ruler energy, fantastic. But sometimes those are harder to access. So you might be going from my goal. What do I need for this? I know that when I'm working on my projects, I'm like, sometimes I really need to find the right teachers for me. Sometimes I need to find the people who are really good at kind of saying, Michael, stop, stop wimping out here. Be braver about this. Be bolder about this.
Yeah. I really like that. And especially, what you mentioned also during our podcast discussion is that they don't have to be people who are actually your best friends. You could
Right.
have these people as social media influences. Maybe you follow someone who's
Yeah.
encouraging, or, you admire how they set their day apart or something like
Right.
that. They don't have to be your best friend, right?
And sometimes you don't even have to have a conversation with them. Like sometimes, I mean, for instance, I ask myself, what would Bob Dylan do? Because for me, Bob Dylan, I love how he keeps putting content out there, how he kind of makes his own path, how he is brilliant about holding on to his own voice. Now, Bob Dylan does not take my phone call. I don't even have his phone number or his email or his. I can't talk to Bob Dylan. But if I sit down and I go, how would Bob Dylan handle this? That actually brings up answers for me that can be really helpful. So you can, my friend Pam Slim taught me this. She's like, you can build your advisory board full of people you'll never actually talk to, but who can be great purveyors of wisdom for you.
Yeah. And just on a personal note, I kind of question whether Bob Dylan has a cell phone. I think that would take a little bit something away from him if he did.
I know. It's kind of like he has somebody who carries around an old landline with him that they plug into the hotel or something. I don't know how he communicates.
Exactly. It'd be great to be a telemarketer that gets Bob Dylan on the phone, though. Anyway, I digress. And we talked about sort of the 6 week mark to
Yeah,
change goals, so that way, if you devote time to it, not all is lost. And also, it's nice to know that you can build off anything. So even if
right,
you do have to pivot, you didn't lose that work.
right.
Before we get to questions from the comments, my last question for you is actually, what pitfalls do you think people should watch for when, working toward their goals? Because,
Right.
sometimes people they may set a goal that really leads them down the wrong path or
Yeah.
something like that. So are there any pitfalls people should watch out for?
I've got two that come to mind immediately, Andrew. So the first is not spending enough time actually thinking about and defining your worthy goal. often and people will be hearing this now, you hear me go thrilling, important, and daunting. Some of you are like, oh, I think I know what that is for me. You'll write something down and you're like, okay, let me get going on this. And one of the key beliefs that I talk about in the book, this is the first third of the book, is things get better when you draft and you redraft and you redraft. Your first version of your worthy goal is a perfect start, and it's also not the final goal. It's not actually the best articulation. So just drafting and redrafting so you find the perfect tension between what's thrilling and what's important, because those are in tension with each other. So you've got to try and figure out the right balance. And what's the most daunting expression that's doable? And what you do by going through drafts is you find the sweet spot between goals that are too big, too vague, too impossible, and goals that are too small and too trivial. And we'll have a bias towards one of those, and drafting and redrafting helps you find the sweet spot. Here's the second challenge I see people bumping into, Andrew, all the time. It's either quitting too soon or not quitting soon enough. And I know that's kind of, again, two ends of a spectrum. But what I'd encourage people who are listening in is to ask yourself this. What's your bias? Is your bias to hold on and keep doing the thing too long? Or is your bias to kind of run too fast, to quit too soon? We all have a bias around that. And there's no perfect answer. There's no generic answer, which is like keep going longer or keep quitting sooner. It's actually getting to know yourself and what your bias is and manage your bias so that when you're thinking to yourself, should I keep going or should I quit? Because you will face that moment, because this is a thrilling, important, and daunting goal. You'll be able to say, my bias is I always quit a bit too soon. So why don't I give this another 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks? Or maybe your bias is like, you know what? I keep digging a hole long after I realize this isn't the right hole to be digging. I should probably think about quitting sooner and faster. So maybe this is the moment for me.
Yeah, I think those are all really good pieces of advice on things to avoid. And in fact, I was just reading a book this morning that's going to be coming out. And one of the big pieces was, if you're working towards something, sometimes you do have to fail on that journey. But then there's also that point where you should just maybe give up because it's not that path isn't working. The question is where to find that balance of sticking with it long enough, but also not to the point of futility. So, that is.
I'd recommend a book by a guy called Seth Godin. Some of you will know that name. He's a great blogger and prolific author as well. One of his books is called The Dip. And effectively, it's about knowing when to stick and knowing when to quit. Really short read, but as with all of Seth's stuff, funny, smart, incisive, opinionated, well worth picking up.
That's great. And also, I want to get to member questions now, but also I just want to say that I think you may have started a new movement called What Would Dylan Do in the comments.
I've seen that in the comments. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Andrea and Alonzo. And, we have two questions here that I think are really perfect for you that hit at the heart of goal setting, but also coaching. And the first one comes from Susanna, who's a teacher. And she asked, as an educator, how can I motivate disadvantaged students to feel empowered in their post-secondary goals?
Gosh, that's such a good question. And a complex question. So then I'd say, look, I'm going to give you some thoughts, but take them all with a grain of salt. Take what's useful, ignore what's not. I would say you've got a couple of possibilities. One is to understand what might be getting in the way of people pursuing their post-secondary goals. So, gosh, it's a good question. I've got a fireworks in my head thinking about how to figure this out. So I might go, what are your strengths? What do we want to amplify? What do we want more of? There's a movement in change management called appreciative inquiry. And it's all about, rather than how do we fix what's not so good, it's how do we amplify the good. So one of the key things that you could support people with is like understanding what's the good and going, how do you get more of that? How do we turn up the volume on that? Another way of coming at it, and this is similar but different, is to help people understand and see and hear the negative self-talk and realize that negative self-talk is not the truth, although it sounds like the truth. little voice in your head saying, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, you're not allowed to do that. Sounds very authoritative, but in fact, it's just a voice. And helping people recognize their own gremlin, as it's sometimes called, and naming the gremlin and hearing how that's not the truth, but just an opinion, actually diminishes the power of that. When you diminish the power of the gremlin, you can actually start seeing, understanding how to best control that or kind of lessen its influence. And then the third one, which is harder for sure, but one of the most powerful questions to ask and to sit with is simply the question, what do you want? What do you really want? And people often haven't been asked about that. And people will struggle often with that answer the first time around. But if you just hold the space, don't rush them, go, and what else do you want? And what else do you want? And what else do you really want? You're giving people permission to put voice to their desire. And when they see and hear their own desire, that often gives them permission to pursue that desire.
Yeah. And also, if you don't mind, I would also say, Susanna, if you can pick up Michael's book, The Coaching Habit, because I think especially if you're working with students, that book will give you a really good roadmap for conversations to have with people. Because I think, just thinking back to my days as a student many years ago, a lot of times if people tell you, oh, you're going to go to college, you're going to do this, it's like, don't tell me what to do. But The Coaching Habit can give you that roadmap of sort of helping them figure out, first of all, what they want, but also finding their own answers to questions that, maybe they're not voicing.
That book's been a big hit with educators. So I appreciate you making that recommendation, Andrew. Thank you.
Of course. And then the next question comes from Harvey. And I think this is really good because especially if you're in your career and you're working toward a goal, Harvey wants to know, how do you deal with an unsupportive boss? And how can you rise in such situations where where the people you want to notice you are not supportive?
Yeah, such a big, hard, great question, because if you're lucky, you've had some really good bosses in your time. If you're human, you've had some bosses who suck. I've had bosses like that. I've probably been a boss like that. So it's a tricky thing to navigate. Here's what I often find is the thing to manage. And it's a all black or all white response to the situation. My boss hates me. My boss is incompetent. My boss is useless, whatever it might be. What can I do? I've just got to survive the next 6 months, 3 years, however long it is until they move on or I move on. And then I'll cross my fingers and hope for what's next. So the two things that I would suggest, and neither of these are easy because it's hard working for a tough boss, is to, first of all, ask yourself, what is possible with this boss? And in part, one of the things you have to figure out is, what does this boss really care about? Because if you understand what success means for this particular person, there may be a way that you can say, I can help them succeed by framing this thing that I want to do in a way that supports their bigger goal. So it's like, get smart, get political, go, what would light them up? What would make them go, this is a win for me? And then frame whatever you want to do around that. And then the bigger question, and I've got a new book coming out in June called How to Work with Almost Anyone. And it's actually about how do you build relationships that are safe and vital and repairable. And it's actually to say to yourself, how do we have a conversation with my boss where rather than talking about what we need to do, we talk about how we work together. And again, look, this is hard, particularly if you're the balance of power is with the other person. And when it's with your boss, that's always the case. But there's a way of having a keystone conversation, as I call them, where you're like, let's talk about how you can bring out the best in me and how I can be the best possible team member for you. And then once we have that conversation, maybe there's a way we can both do a little bit more to allow that to happen for both of us. But I don't mean to sugarcoat it. It's like when you're working with a really difficult boss, it is dispiriting. It's depressing at times. So make sure you got your people behind you, giving you encouragement, reminding you about who you are, and then go, what's possible with this person? If I really open my heart and open my head, what might I be able to do to make some incremental gains?
Yeah, I think those are great pieces of advice, and it looks like Harvey is also always looking for opportunities. So, Harvey, best of luck to you. And
Yeah,
I definitely endorse everything Michael said, especially when all hope is lost. When it with a person like that, maybe this isn't the right terminology to use, but everyone has their own selfish objectives in the workplace.
yeah.
And if you know what your bosses are, and you could tap into that, it could sort of be your in a
Right,
way. Yeah.
right. And people will want. People are often driven by status, by control, by impact, by reputation. So it's beyond just some of the more practical, tactical things. It's like what are the deeper needs that people have? And if in the Coaching Habit book, there's actually a list of 12 foundational needs that human beings have. And once you understand the deeper need that drives somebody, then you're better able to provide the sort of more specific thing that might make them feel good about giving you autonomy, permission, or whatever to work on the thing you care about.
Yeah. No, that is a really great question. Really great point. And actually, before I let you go, I have one question that I promised I would get to because it's from a LinkedIn employee who was
Perfect.
actually my partner in your Coaching Habit course that I took through Microsoft, which is LinkedIn's parent company.
Yep.
And his name's Stefan, sorry. And he wants to know, in your book, The Coaching Habit, you introduce us to the amazing 7 powerful questions.
Yep.
I use them all the time. Are there
Beautiful.
any updates to these questions or any bonus questions that haven't made the top 7?
Oh, there are so many good questions. Look, this is a long way away, but I've got a book coming out in May next year, May 2024, which is a journal style book, which gives you kind of 5 questions for daily check in and a weekly question for kind of self check in. But I'll give you the 3 questions I use to start my day. It takes me less than a minute to answer these 3 questions, but I find it brings me focus and gratitude and encouragement to start each day. The first is, what do I notice? And I'm noticing what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, or what's out there in the world. But I just ask myself the question, what do I notice? And that makes me more present to the moment. The second question I ask myself is, what am I grateful for? Because there's just been a ton of research that says a gratitude practice makes you love your life more, makes you happier. And I'm like, I can't fight the science on this one. You'll have heard of this before, but a gratitude question, what am I grateful for? And then the third question I ask myself at the start of every day is, what's the one thing today? Because I have a to-do list that is too long and too overdue and too much. I live in a state of overwhelm, even with all the stuff I know about not getting out, being in overwhelm. But if I define for myself the one thing that I need to do that day, then even if I don't get to everything that I've said I could do in a day, at least I'll have identified and done the one thing. So maybe those 3 questions might be helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be. And also I'm look forward to the journal book. I am a big fan of actually like workbooks.
It's good. I've written that. I can't. I have to wait till May next year for it to come out. So I've literally been collecting questions for 30 years, and I'm like, I've got my very best questions in this journal. So it's gonna be wonderful.
That's fantastic, and obviously you have your book coming out, I think you said in June, so,
That's right.
that's fantastic, and I know that there are a few questions that we haven't been able to get to, so I hope people will follow you on LinkedIn and connect with
Please.
you, because, you're posting great content and
Thank you.
obviously you're there, so thank you so much, Michael, I really appreciate your time.
Andrew, you're a gem. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you for such a wonderful community of people. Great questions. Thanks for having me. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, and thank you to everyone who joined us. I know I see Susanna, I see Andrea. You all took a lot from this conversation, as did I. Michael's always so wonderful and encouraging to talk to. And like I said, I really hope you will follow him on LinkedIn. And like we were just posting his profile link at the bottom, and you'll find it in the comments as well. And as I said, Michael was a guest on my podcast. And coming up this week, we have another episode of that. And I will be talking to Elise Powers, who is the founder of Eleview Consulting. But more than that, she is actually a pro when it comes to networking and the power that it can give you in your job search and career. You can check out that episode wherever you like to listen to podcasts when it's live on Wednesday, March 15th. And like I said, you could find that on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you like to listen. Just look for Get Hired with Andrew Seaman and it'll pop up. You'll see my beautiful face and just click subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you like them, leave us a rating because it helps other people who are job seekers and career advancers get to the episodes as well. And then next Monday on the 20th, Elise will join my colleague, Brandy Fowler, on the next episode of Get Hired Live. And that will be on Monday, March 20th at noon Eastern Time. You can RSVP to that show using the link in the comments. As always, I just want to thank you for being here. The world is always a crazy place. There's a lot of rains that just hit California. There are obviously some financial things going on. Just take care of yourself mentally, physically. You can only be a good candidate. You can only get hired if you're safe and well enough to do so. So until next time, be well, stay safe, and best of luck.